I always believed my family saw me as the reliable safety net. That illusion died on a Tuesday afternoon when my sister, Ivy, accidentally texted me a screen recording of a private group chat I did not know existed. I watched my parents and relatives laugh, not just at my expense, but while planning, in calm, terrifying detail, how to use my signature to launder their debt and destroy my name. The silence in my apartment was expensive, but I had paid for it. At 32 years old, I had finally curated a life in Harbor Glen that felt like mine. It was a careful, deliberate existence, built on boundaries that I maintained with the exhausting diligence of a gardener fighting invasive ivy. My apartment was on the third floor of a converted brick building, a solid 20-minute drive from the pristine, manicured cul-de-sacs where my parents lived. I had my own coffee maker, my own Netflix account, and a job as a logistics coordinator that my mother described to her friends as administrative support, because it sounded less industrial. I was the Ward family's responsible one, the safety net, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who showed up early to Thanksgiving to peel potatoes, and the one who always had a spare phone charger or a jumper cable in her trunk. For years, I wore that identity like a badge of honor. I thought being reliable was the same thing as being loved. It took me a decade of therapy and 3 failed relationships to realize that for my family. My reliability was not a virtue they admired. It was a utility they consumed. So, I established the polite distance. I still answered their calls, but I let them go to voicemail first. I still went to Sunday dinner, but I drove my own car so I could leave whenever I wanted. I thought I had found the balance. I thought I was safe. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of gray, drizzly October night that makes you want to stay inside and bake something unnecessarily complicated. I was sitting at my kitchen island, scrolling through emails and half-watching a documentary about deep-sea exploration, when my phone buzzed against the granite countertop. It was a text from Ivy. My younger sister and I had a relationship that vacillated between conspiratorial closeness and guarded estrangement. Depending on how much time she was spending with our mother, Ivy was 27, beautiful in the way that made people want to give her things, and perpetually in a state of chaotic transition. The text was brief. "Mom wanted you to see this," followed by a crying laughing emoji. Below the text was a video file. I frowned, wiping a smudge of flour from my thumb before tapping the screen. I expected a video of the dog doing something foolish, or perhaps my father attempting to dance at a neighbor's barbecue. Those were the approved commodities of our family digital exchange. Harmless, performative. The video opened. It was not a camera recording. It was a screen recording. Someone, presumably Ivy, had recorded their own phone screen while participating in a group video call. The interface was familiar. A grid of faces against different backgrounds. But the name of the group chat at the top of the screen was not one I recognized. It was titled The Clean Sweep, followed by a broom emoji. I did not understand the joke. I had never heard of this group. I turned the volume up. The first face I saw was my mother, Lydia. She was sitting in her sunroom, the one with the white wicker furniture and the skylights that always leaked during heavy rain. The lighting was flattering, washing out her wrinkles and highlighting the expertly applied blonde of her hair. She was holding a glass of white wine and laughing. Next to her, in a separate square, was my father, Frank. He was in his home office, the leather chair squeaking as he leaned back. He looked calm, professional. He was wearing his reading glasses, peering down at a document on his desk. In the bottom squares were my Uncle Marcus and my cousin Seth. Marcus was in his car, the seatbelt cutting across his chest, and Seth looked like he was in a bar or a restaurant, the background noisy and dim, and in the corner, the smallest square, was Ivy. I brought the phone closer to my face. My mother was speaking. Her voice was tinny through the phone speakers, but the cadence was unmistakable. It was her performance voice, the one she used for PTA meetings and bank tellers. "So we tell her it is a bridge loan," she said, gesturing with her wine glass. "We frame it as a bridge. Willow loves that corporate speak. It makes her feel smart." My father looked up from his papers. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "We do not need to oversell it. Lydia," he said. His voice was a low rumble. "If you push too hard, she shuts down. You have to approach her like she is doing us a favor. But a small one, a formality. Tell her the refinance on the duplex requires a second signature because of the new trust laws. She will not check the laws. She trusts the structure." My stomach gave a strange, violent lurch. They were talking about me. I sat up straighter on the stool, the air in my kitchen suddenly feeling very thin. I tapped the screen to pause it, my finger hovering over my father's face. I took a breath, trying to steady the sudden erratic thumping of my heart, and pressed play again. Uncle Marcus chuckled. It was a wet, heavy sound. The girl would sign a confession if you told her it would help the family credit score. He said, "You are worrying too much. Just put the paper in front of her. It is not just the signature," my father said, ignoring Marcus. "We need the mail routing. We need her to agree to have the statement sent to the house for 6 months. We tell her it is to keep the paperwork centralized for Nana." "For Nana?" Ivy's voice cut through the mix. I looked at Ivy's square. She was not laughing. Her face was pale, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that made her look younger and more fragile than she was. She looked like she was trying to swallow something sharp. "Yes, for Nana," my mother said sharply. "Do not give me that look. Ivy, we are doing this to save the asset. If we do not move the debt, the nursing home takes everything. Do you want your grandmother to end up in a state facility?" "No," Ivy whispered. "Then we use Willow," my mother said, her voice softening into that dangerous, sugary tone that I knew better than my own name. "Her credit is pristine. She has never missed a payment in her life. She is the perfect clean front. We move the debt from the duplex into the new LLC. We use Willow as the guarantor, and we have the cash flow to pay off the personal loans. In a year, we refinance again and take her name off. She will never even know the money moved. But what if she checks?" Ivy asked. Her eyes were darting sideways, looking at something off-screen. "She will not check," my cousin Seth said, speaking for the first time. He sounded bored. "Willow is too afraid of conflict to audit her own parents." I felt a cold flush spread across my chest, rising up my neck. It was a physical sensation, like stepping into a freezer. They were dissecting me. They were passing my personality around like a specimen in a jar, poking at my weaknesses, measuring my compliance. But the worst part was not the insults. I had known for years that my family found me boring and overly cautious. The worst part was the precision. My father held up the document he had been reading. "I have the script ready," he said. He sounded like a general planning a flank maneuver. "We invite her for dinner on Sunday. Roast chicken, her favorite. We wait until after dessert. Ivy, you bring up how confused Nana has been lately, how hard it is to manage the accounts. That primes the pump. Then I explain that to protect the estate. We need a temporary co-signer to secure the asset against the state's look-back period." "It is a lie," Ivy said. "It is a strategy," my father corrected. He looked directly into the camera lens, and for a second, it felt like he was looking right at me. "Willow is useful. She has a clean record and a high score. We are just leveraging an underutilized asset. It is good business." "And if she hesitates?" Seth asked. My mother laughed. It was a bright, tinkling sound that curdled the blood in my veins. "Then I cry." She said, "I tell her I am overwhelmed. I tell her I cannot believe she would let money stand in the way of caring for her grandmother. She will fold. She always folds." I put the phone down on the counter. My hands were shaking so badly I could hear the case rattle against the stone. I needed to stand up. I walked to the sink and gripped the edge of the porcelain, staring out the window at the brick wall of the building next door. My family was planning to steal my identity. No, that was too dramatic. They were planning to borrow it. They were planning to trick me into signing a loan for a property, Nana's duplex, that was supposed to be paid off years ago. They were going to leverage my credit to cover their own debts, and they were scripting the conversation like a play. I walked back to the phone. I had to watch it again. I needed to be sure. Maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe this was a joke. A cruel, twisted joke, but a joke nonetheless. I hit replay. This time, I forced myself to look past the faces. I watched the edges of the frame. I listened to the background noise. In my father's office, on the corner of the mahogany desk, there was a stack of envelopes. They were thick, creamy paper. The logo in the corner was blue and green. I paused the video and pinched the screen to zoom in. Harbor Glen Community Credit Union. I did not bank there. My parents did not bank there. Next to the envelopes was a yellow sticky note attached to a manila folder. The handwriting was my mother's jagged, loopy scrawl. POA renewal. Notarize by Friday. POA. Power of attorney. I felt a wave of nausea. Nana was in Cedar Hollow, an assisted living facility on the north side of town. She was 84, physically frail but mentally sharp, though my parents often spoke over her as if she were furniture. Nana had always been fierce about her independence. She managed her own checkbook. She had a duplex in West Alder that she rented out, using the income to pay for her facility fees. She had told me explicitly, dozens of times, that she never wanted my father to touch her finances. He gambles. Willow, she had whispered to me once, pressing a $50 bill into my hand during a Christmas visit. He gambles with things that aren't his. I looked at the video again. I focused on Ivy. In the first viewing, I had just heard her voice. Now, I watched her face. She looked terrified. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking just past it, her eyes wide and watery. Her mouth was set in a tight line. Every time my father spoke, she flinched, a microscopic movement of her shoulders, and then, right at the end of the video, before the recording stopped, my father said the thing that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Seth had asked a question I missed the first time. What if she finds out later? Seth asked. What if she gets a notification? My father smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile devoid of warmth, the smile of a predator assessing a wounded animal. If she panics, he said calmly, we flip it. We tell everyone she's having an episode. We call it a mental health thing. We say she is confused, that she signed the papers and forgot, that she is harassing us. Who are people going to believe? The successful parents, or the single daughter who lives alone and sees a therapist? The video ended. I stood in my kitchen, the silence ringing in my ears like a siren. We call it a mental health thing. They had a contingency plan for destroying my reputation. They weren't just prepared to steal my credit. They were prepared to dismantle my sanity to cover their tracks. My phone buzzed again. It was Ivy. Willow? Then another text. 3 seconds later. Please tell me you didn't watch that. And then a third. Oh God. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stared at the messages. I typed a response. My fingers clumsy and numb. What is this? Ivy? My phone rang immediately. The screen lit up with her name. I stared at it for 3 rings. I knew I should answer. I knew I needed information, but I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, a scream would come out that I wouldn't be able to stop. I slid my thumb across the screen. Hello? My voice sounded strange, hollow, scraped clean. Willow. Ivy's voice was a frantic whisper. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. Willow, listen to me. It was an accident. I was trying to send the video of the cat. I selected the wrong file. Please, you have to delete it. Is it real? I asked. Willow, please, is it real? Ivy? I heard her take a ragged breath. Yes, but they haven't done it yet. It's just talk. You know how Dad gets. He just likes to plan things. It's not real unless you sign the papers. I looked at the freeze frame of the video on my screen. The envelopes, the sticky note. They aren't just talking. Ivy. I said, I saw the envelopes. Harbor Glen. Credit Union. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a heavy, guilty silence. Ivy, I said, my voice dropping. What have they done? Willow, don't, she sobbed. Please don't blow this up, Dad said. He said if this gets out, it ruins everyone. He'll lose his license. Mom will lose the club membership. They'll lose the house. Please, just pretend you didn't see it. I'll make sure they don't ask you to sign. I promise. I'll stop them. Just delete the video. You want me to delete the evidence that our parents are plotting to defraud me? I asked. It's not fraud, Ivy insisted, her voice rising in panic. It's family. We help each other. They are planning to call me crazy. Ivy, I shouted, my control finally snapping. I heard him. We flip it and call it a mental health thing. That's what he said. Ivy was crying now. Ugly, gasping sobs. I know, she choked out. I know, that's why I looked so sick. I didn't agree with it. I promise. But you stayed on the call, I said coldly. You stayed on the call, and you didn't warn me. I couldn't. Why? Because... Ivy's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. Because he checks my phone. Willow, he checks everything. If he knows I sent this... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I hung up. I stood there, gripping the phone, staring at the black screen. I felt like I was going to throw up. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same. Brown hair, pale skin, tired eyes, but I wasn't the same. The version of Willow Ward who existed 5 minutes ago, the dutiful daughter, the safety net, was dead. She had been killed by a screen recording. I went back to the kitchen. I did not delete the video. I opened my laptop. My hands were still shaking, but a cold mechanical part of my brain had taken over. It was the part of me that organized logistics for international shipping crates. The part that dealt with facts, not feelings. I connected my phone to the laptop. I transferred the video file. Then I logged into my encrypted cloud storage and uploaded it there. Then I emailed a copy to my work address. Then I put the file on a USB drive and put the drive in the bottom of my box of tampons in the bathroom cabinet. 3 copies. I sat down at the table and opened a fresh notebook. I wrote the date at the top of the page. October 14th. People involved. Frank Ward, Lydia Ward, Marcus Ward, Seth Ward, Ivy Ward. Key phrases: bridge loan, refinance on the duplex. Wardstone? No. They didn't say the name of the entity. Just new LLC. Harbor Glen Community Credit Union, POA renewal, mental health smear campaign. Writing it down made it look worse. It looked like a police report. I sat in the dark of my living room for hours. I didn't turn on the lamps. I just watched the headlights of cars passing on the street below, casting long, sliding shadows across my ceiling. I went through the stages of grief in a chaotic, non-linear loop. I was angry. I was furious. I wanted to drive to their house and throw a brick through the window. I wanted to scream at them until my throat bled. Then I was sad. A deep, crushing sorrow that made my bones ache. My parents didn't love me. They didn't even like me. They saw me as a resource, a harvestable crop. Then I was in denial. Maybe Ivy was right. Maybe it was just talk. My father was a blowhard. He loved to hear himself speak. He loved to sound like a tycoon. Maybe the envelopes were for something else. But the phrase stuck in my head. We use Willow as the guarantor. She will never even know the money moved. And if she panics, we call it a mental health thing. That wasn't just talk. That was a weapon. It was 2 a.m. when the practical thought hit me. If they were planning to use my credit, they needed my information. But they already had my information. They knew my social security number. They knew my mother's maiden name. They knew the name of my first pet. They knew everything a security question would ask, and they had the envelopes. I opened my laptop again. The screen was blindingly bright in the dark room. I navigated to the website of the credit bureau. I had checked my credit score 6 months ago when I bought a new car. It had been 810. Perfect. I typed in my username and password. I had to answer a security question. What was the make of your first car? Honda. The screen loaded. A little spinning circle. I held my breath. The dashboard appeared. Total open accounts. 4. I frowned. That was wrong. I had a car loan. I had 1 credit card I used for points. I had my student loans. which were paid off. That should be 2 open accounts. I clicked on the tab labeled Open Accounts. The list expanded. Auto finance. Balance. $12,000. Correct. Chase Sapphire. Balance. $400. Correct. Harbor Glen. Community Credit Union. Personal loan. Opened. August 12th. Balance. $15,000. Visa Platinum. Opened. September 4th. Balance. $6,500. The air left my lungs. August. That was 2 months ago. They hadn't just been planning it. I clicked on the details for the personal loan. Co-borrower, Frank Ward. Mailing address, 442 Oak Lane, Harbor Glen. My parents' address. I stared at the numbers. $15,000. $6,000. $21,000 of debt that I didn't know existed. They had already started. The meeting in the video wasn't a planning session. It was a progress report. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating the tears that were finally, silently, sliding down my face. I wasn't the safety net anymore. I was the prey. And I was already caught. The blue light from my laptop screen seemed to hum in the silence of my apartment. It was 3 a.m, and the world outside was asleep. But inside my chest, a riot was taking place. I stared at the line item on my credit report. Harbor Glen Community Credit Union. Personal loan. $15,000. Below it was another. Visa Platinum. $6,500. Both accounts were tied to 442 Oak Lane. My parents' house. I sat there for a long time, just breathing. In movies, when people find out they have been betrayed, they scream or throw things. I did not do that. I felt a strange, cold paralysis, as if my blood had turned to slush. I was 32 years old. I had built a credit score of 810 through a decade of skipping vacations, driving a used sedan, and paying every single bill 3 days early. I had treated my financial reputation like a fragile antique, dusting it off and keeping it safe on a high shelf. And now, looking at the screen, I realized my parents had simply reached up, taken it down, and smashed it to pave a road for themselves. It was not just the money. Money, theoretically, could be paid back. It was the address, 442 Oak Lane. They had used their own home as the base of operations for stealing my identity. They had opened mail with my name on it, sitting at their kitchen table, the same table where we ate Christmas breakfast, and they had activated cards, signed forms, and spent money, all while looking me in the face every Sunday and asking how work was going. The video I had watched hours earlier, the one where they laughed about using me as a clean front, was not hypothetical. It was not a what-if scenario my father was spinning to feel powerful. It was a post-game analysis. They were not planning the crime. They were already managing the logistics. I closed my laptop, but I could not close my mind. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a physical weight on my chest every time I drifted toward sleep. I heard my father's voice from the recording. If she panics, we flip it and call it a mental health thing. They were banking on my silence. They were banking on the fact that Willow Ward was the good daughter, the one who would never cause a scene, the one who would absorb the blow rather than let the family facade crack. They thought I would see this debt, call them in a panic, and let them talk me into fixing it privately, which would just mean me paying for it while they patted my head. I got up at 6 a.m, I made coffee, I showered, I put on my work clothes, a gray blazer and slacks, because I needed the armor. Then, I sat down at my computer and started the war. I did not call my parents. I did not text Ivy. I went to the website for the First Credit Bureau. My hands were trembling, hovering over the mouse, but I forced myself to click. Freeze credit. I filled out the form. I set a PIN. Then I did it for the second bureau, then the third. Then I set up fraud alerts. It felt terrifying. Freezing my credit felt like burning a bridge I was standing on. It was an aggressive act. It would flag every application, stop every check. It was a signal to the financial world that something was wrong. But I was more terrified of doing nothing. If I let this slide for another week, another month, the $15,000 could turn into 50. The duplex scheme they talked about in the video, moving the debt from Nana's property, could be next. At 9 in the morning, I called the Harbor Glen Community Credit Union. I expected to be on hold for an hour, but a cheerful voice answered on the second ring. Harbor Glen Community, this is Sarah. How can I make your day brighter? I took a breath. My voice felt tight, like a wire pulled to the breaking point. Hi, Sarah. My name is Willow Ward. I am looking at my credit report, and I see a personal loan from your institution for $15,000. I did not open this loan. There was a pause. The cheerful scratching of a pen stopped. Oh, I see, Sarah said, her tone shifting to professional concern. Let me pull up the account. Can I have your social security number? I gave it to her. Okay, Ms. Ward, I see the loan here. It was opened on August 12th. Everything looks in order on our end. We have a signed promissory note and identity verification. My stomach twisted. How? I asked. I never stepped foot in your branch. It was an online application. Sarah explained. We use a secure e-signature platform, DocuSign. And the verification? I asked. You just give $15,000 to anyone who types in a social? No. Ma'am, we perform a two-step verification. A code was sent to the phone number on file, and we also did a verbal confirmation call before disbursement. What number did you call? I asked. Let me check the log. It was a number ending in 44. My phone number ended in 89. That is not my number, I said. Well, it is the number listed on the application, Sarah said, sounding slightly defensive now. And we spoke to a female who identified herself as Willow Ward. She verified the date of birth, the mother's maiden name, and the employer information. I closed my eyes. A female voice. Ivy? My mother? My mother had a lower register than me. But over a cell phone connection, could she pitch it up? Or had they forced Ivy to do it? The thought made me sick. Ivy, who had looked so miserable in the video, pretending to be me, confirming my details so our father could get cash. Sarah, I said, keeping my voice steady. That was not me. I live in an apartment on 3rd Street, not at the Oak Lane address listed on that loan. I did not sign that note. I am telling you, this is fraud. Ma'am, Sarah said, her voice cooling, these are serious accusations. Since the funds were dispersed to an account, let me see, an account at Chase Bank ending in 1109. That is my parents' joint account. I said, I cannot confirm the owner of the external account. Sarah said, but if you are claiming identity theft, you need to file a police report and send us the case number. Until then, the loan is in your name, and the first payment is actually past due. I hung up. My parents' joint account. They had taken out a loan in my name and deposited the money directly into their own checking account. They had not even bothered to launder it through a fake account. They were that confident. They were that arrogant. They thought, Willow will never check, and if she does, she won't call the police on Mommy and Daddy. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Ivy. Dad says you always assume the worst. He's asking why you left the family group chat. I had not left the chat. I had just muted it, but clearly, my silence was loud. I stared at the message. Then another one came through. Willow, please talk to me. Mom is pacing around the kitchen. She says you are being dramatic. Please don't go to the police. It's fixable. I read the words. It's fixable, and felt a surge of rage so hot it almost blinded me. Fixable was their code word for, we will guilt you into absorbing the damage. Please don't go to the police. That was the tell. Ivy was scared. But more importantly, she was relaying messages. She was in the room with them. Dad says. Ivy was compromised. I could not talk to her. Anything I said to Ivy would be repeated to Frank and Lydia within seconds. They were using her as a sensor, sending pings to see how close the enemy was. I put the phone in my drawer. I needed professional help. Not a therapist, a weapon. I took the afternoon off work. I told my boss I had a dental emergency, which was a lie, but not entirely. My teeth were aching from how hard I had been clenching my jaw. I drove to Lake Briar. It was the next town over, a 40-minute drive past the suburban sprawl of Harbor Glen. I wanted an attorney who did not play golf with my father. I wanted someone who did not know the Ward family reputation. I found a consumer rights attorney named Elias Vance. His office was in a strip mall. Sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a karate dojo, the waiting room smelled of stale coffee and old carpet, but the diplomas on the wall were real, and his reviews online said he was a pit bull. Elias Vance was a small man with a messy beard and eyes that looked like they had seen every scam in the book. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. I told him about the video, though I did not show it to him yet, and I told him about the credit report, the loan, and the verification call. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and tented his fingers. "Ms. Ward," he said. His voice was gravelly. "You have a choice to make, and it is going to be the hardest choice of your life, but you have to make it today." "What choice?" I asked. He pointed to the credit report I had printed out. "Under the law, you are not liable for debts created through identity theft," he said. "But to prove identity theft, you have to prove you did not authorize it. And since the beneficiaries of this fraud are your parents, the bank is going to require a police report. They will not write off $15,000 just because you say it wasn't you. They need a crime number." I stared at his messy desk. "A police report. If I file a report," I said, "what happens to them?" Vance shrugged. "Depending on the prosecutor, it could be felony fraud. Identity theft, wire fraud, they could face prison time, probation at the very least, but the conviction will be on their record." "And if I don't report it?" I asked. Vance looked at me with pity. That was the worst look. I did not want pity. "If you don't report it," he said, "you are effectively ratifying the debt. You are telling the bank, 'Yes, I know about this, and I accept it.' The debt becomes yours. You pay the $15,000. You pay the $6,000 on the card. And—" He paused. "And what?" "And you teach them that you are a safe target." He said, "If you eat this loss to protect them, they will do it again. And next time, it won't be $15,000. It will be a mortgage. It will be a business line of credit. They will bleed you dry until you are bankrupt, and then they will blame you for being bad with money." I felt cold. He was describing the video. "We use Willow. Clean front. I have evidence." I said quietly, "I have a video. A screen recording my sister sent me by accident. They are discussing the plan. They talk about using my credit as a bridge." Vance sat up straight. His eyes sharpened. "You have a recording of the conspiracy?" he asked. "Yes." He let out a low whistle. "That changes the geometry. That takes this from a he-said-she-said family dispute to a documented scheme. That is leverage, Miss Ward. But it is also dangerous. If they know you have it, they will escalate." "They don't know." I said. "At least, I don't think they know I watched it. My sister thinks I deleted it. Keep it that way," Vance said. "Save it in 3 places: cloud, hard drive, and print a transcript. Do not share it with anyone yet, not even your sister, especially not your sister." He slid a retainer agreement across the desk. "If we do this," he said, "we go all the way. We dispute the debt with an affidavit of forgery. We file the police report. We notify the credit bureaus. We lock down everything. It is going to get ugly. Your parents will attack you. They will lie about you. Are you ready for that?" I thought about the sticky note on the desk in the video. POA renewal. They were coming for Nana next. They were going to use my name to swallow her assets. "I am ready," I said. I picked up the pen. I drove back toward Harbor Glen in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the highway. I had signed the papers. I had initiated a legal process that could put my father in handcuffs. It felt surreal, like I was moving through water. I took the exit for West Alder. It wasn't on my way home, but I needed to see it. Nana's duplex was on a quiet street lined with maples. It was a modest building, gray siding with white trim. Nana had bought it 30 years ago with her husband. my grandfather, and she had maintained it meticulously until she moved into Cedar Hollow. She always said the rental income was her freedom fund. I pulled my car to the curb and idled. The house looked the same, but there was a sign in the front yard. For lease, Unit B available, managed by Wardstone Property Solutions. Call 555-0199. Wardstone Property Solutions. I stared at the sign. The name sounded solid, corporate, respectable. If you didn't know better, you would think it was a legitimate firm. But I knew the name Wardstone. It was the name of the street my father grew up on. He lacked imagination, even in his crimes. I pulled out my phone and opened the browser. I navigated to the Secretary of State's business search portal. I had done this 100 times for work, checking vendor legitimacy. I typed in Wardstone Property Solutions, LLC. The result popped up instantly. Status, active, filing. Date, July 20th. Registered agent, Seth Ward, my cousin Seth, the one in the video who had asked, "What if she finds out?" I clicked on the View Filing button. A PDF opened. I zoomed in on the signature block for the manager/member. It wasn't signed by Seth. It was signed Willow J. Ward. I stopped breathing. My middle initial was Jane. I never used it. I always signed Willow Ward. But on my birth certificate and on my driver's license, it was Willow J. Ward. The signature was a scribble, but it looked vaguely like mine, just close enough to pass a casual glance. They hadn't just used my name for a loan. They had made me an officer of a company I didn't know existed. If Wardstone Property Solutions was sued, if it evaded taxes, if it committed fraud, I was the manager. I was the one liable. Seth was just the registered agent, the guy who gets the mail. I was the legal face of the operation. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to open the car door and spit bile onto the pavement. They had framed me. They had built a shell company, put my name on it, and were using it to seize Nana's property. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. My fear was evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. They weren't just borrowing my credit. They were setting me up as the fall guy for a massive financial extraction. I put the car in gear and drove to Cedar Hollow. It was past visiting hours, but the night nurse knew me. I walked through the quiet hallways, smelling the familiar mix of lavender sanitizer and cafeteria soup. Nana was in her room, sitting in her armchair, watching a game show with the volume turned up too high. She looked small. Her white hair was thin, and her hands, resting on the blanket, were knobby with arthritis. But when she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Willow," she chirped. "Look at you. Working late? You look like you've been dragged through a hedge backward." I forced a smile and kissed her cheek. Her skin felt like paper. "Just a long day." "Nana, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." The soup was cold again. But what else is new? I pulled up a chair close to her. I needed to be careful. I didn't want to scare her, but I needed to know the truth. "Nana," I said gently, "I drove past the duplex today." Her face brightened. "Did you? Is the grass cut?" "I told that boy to cut it on Thursdays. The grass is fine." I said, "But I saw a sign out front. For a management company. Wardstone Property Solutions." Nana frowned. She picked up the remote and muted the TV. "Wardstone?" she asked. "Who is that?" "You don't know them?" I asked, watching her face closely. "No," she said. "I use Miller Realty. I've used them for 10 years. Dave Miller handles the leases." "Nana," I said, taking her hand, "did Mom or Dad talk to you about changing management companies? Maybe to save money?" She shook her head, looking genuinely confused. "No, your father mentioned something about—" "Oh, what was it?" "Simplifying the estate. He brought some papers by last week. Said it was for the insurance. Did you sign them?" I asked. The air in the room felt heavy. Nana looked at the wall, thinking. "I think so. He said it was just standard updates." "Why? Is something wrong?" My heart broke. She trusted him. He was her son. He walked in with a stack of papers and said, "Insurance." And she signed because she couldn't imagine he would rob her. No. Nana. I lied. Nothing is wrong. I just hadn't heard of that company before. I'll check with Dad. I stood up. I couldn't stay. If I stayed, I would cry. And if I cried, she would worry. I love you, Nana. I love you too. Dear, you work too hard. Tell your mother I said hello. I walked out of the room, my heels clicking on the linoleum. I needed to get out of there. I needed to get home and scan the Secretary of State documents. I needed to send everything to Vance. As I reached the reception desk, a woman I didn't recognize looked up. She was wearing a beige cardigan and had a polite, administrative smile. Ms. Ward? She asked. Yes? I'm the evening shift supervisor. I just wanted to check in. We had a note in the file from your mother. I froze. My mother? Oh? I said. Yes, the woman said, lowering her voice to a sympathetic whisper. She mentioned that you might be coming by to ask about finances. She just wanted us to be aware that you can get, well, a little obsessive about the numbers. I stared at her. The lobby seemed to tilt sideways. She said that? I asked. She just asked us to be patient with you. The woman continued, oblivious to the fact that she was driving a knife into my back. She mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately, and sometimes you get confused about your grandmother's accounts. We just want you to know that everything is handled, okay? You don't need to worry. I looked at this woman, this stranger, who had already been briefed on my condition. My mother had planted the landmines before I even walked onto the field. She had inoculated the staff against me. If I raised the alarm about the duplex, they wouldn't see a whistleblower. They would see a stressed, confused daughter having an episode. We flip it and call it a mental health thing. It wasn't a future plan. It was already done. Thank you, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. I appreciate you telling me that. I walked out the automatic doors into the cool night air. I got into my car and locked the doors. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They thought they had checkmated me. They thought that by questioning my sanity, they could neutralize my truth. They thought I would be too ashamed, too scared, too isolated to fight back. But they had made a mistake. They thought they were dealing with the old Willow, the one who wanted to be liked, the one who wanted to keep the peace. They didn't realize that Willow was gone. I started the engine. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to document. I was going to record. And I was going to wait for them to make the next move. Because now I knew exactly what game we were playing. I drove home. The image of the Wardstone sign burned into my retinas. The game was rigged, but I had the one thing they didn't account for. I knew the rules, and I was done playing nice. I decided to call them on a Wednesday evening. It was a strategic choice. Wednesday was the day my father played golf, and my mother hosted her book club, which was really just a wine-drinking circle that occasionally read a dust jacket. They would be tired, perhaps a little loose, and likely off guard. I sat in my living room, the phone on speaker, my notebook open in front of me. I had written down my questions. I had rehearsed my tone. I needed to sound confused, not accusatory. If I sounded angry, they would hang up. If I sounded crazy, they would win. I needed to sound like the dutiful daughter who had stumbled upon a clerical error. I dialed the landline. They still had a landline. My father insisted on it. The phone rang 4 times. Hello? My mother answered. She sounded breathless, the background noise of clinking glass suggesting the book club had just dispersed. Hi, Mom, I said. It is Willow. Oh, Willow, she chirped. We were just talking about you. Mrs. Gable asked if you were still single. I told her you are focusing on your career. That was her opening gambit, a subtle reminder of my social failure. That is nice of you, I said, keeping my voice flat. Is Dad there? I need to ask you both something. Hold on. Frank, it is Willow. A moment later, the line clicked, and my father picked up on the extension in his study. I am here, he said. His voice was heavy, the vocal cords of a man who had smoked cigars for 20 years. What is wrong? Car trouble? No. Dad, I said, I was looking at my credit report today. Just a routine check. There was a silence on the line. It was short, maybe half a second, but it was heavy. And? My father asked. And I saw a personal loan from Harbor Glen Community Credit Union. I said, for $15,000 and a credit card. Both are listed under your address. I waited. My mother laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound, like glass breaking. Oh, for heaven's sake, Willow, she said. Is that why you called? You had me worried someone had died. It is $15,000. Mom, I said, I did not sign for it. You are being dramatic, she said. We put you down as a secondary on the account to build your history. We talked about this at Christmas. Don't you remember? We did not talk about this, I said, and it is not a secondary account. It is a primary loan in my name. My father sighed. It was a sound of profound disappointment. Willow, you are tired, he said. You have been working too hard. I told Lydia that job was grinding you down. You forget things. We discussed this. It was to help with the property transfer for Nana, a temporary bridge. You agreed to help the family. I gripped the edge of the table. I did not agree to open a loan. Dad, I said. And I saw something else, an LLC, Wardstone Property Solutions. My name is on that too, as a manager. This time, the silence was longer. Wardstone? My mother asked, her voice pitching up. What on earth is Wardstone? You are imagining things. Willow, I am looking at the Secretary of State filing. Mom, I said, it has my signature. Or what looks like my signature. My father's voice turned cold. It lost the paternal warmth and became the voice of the man in the video. Are you accusing us of something? Willow, he asked. I am asking why my name is on a company I do not own. I said, you are sounding paranoid. He said, extremely paranoid. This is exactly what we were afraid of. You get fixated on numbers. You start seeing patterns that aren't there. And you lash out at the people who love you. I am not lashing out. I said, I am asking a question. You are hysterical. My mother cut in. Just like your aunt, always looking for a fight. We are trying to protect Nana's estate, and you are harassing us about paperwork you clearly do not understand. Go to sleep. Willow, we will talk when you are rational. They hung up. The dial tone hummed in the empty room. They hadn't denied it. Not really. They hadn't said we didn't do it. They had said you are crazy for noticing. I put the phone down. My hands were not shaking this time. I felt a strange, icy calm. I had confirmed it. They weren't going to confess. They were going to gaslight me until I broke. I went to the kitchen to make tea. I needed to sleep. I had a presentation at work the next morning. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was my work email. I rarely checked it after 7 in the evening, but the subject line caught my eye. Confidential. HR inquiry. I froze. The kettle began to whistle. A rising scream that matched the panic in my throat. I turned the stove off and opened the email on my phone. Dear Willow, we have received a formal complaint through our anonymous ethics portal regarding your conduct. The complaint alleges that you have been using company time and resources to harass an elderly relative regarding financial matters, and that you have displayed signs of emotional instability that may pose a risk to the workplace environment, given the nature of the allegations. We need to schedule a meeting with you and the Director of Human Resources tomorrow morning at 9. Sincerely, Linda Halloway, HR Manager. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the linoleum floor. Harassing an elderly relative, signs of instability. It had been less than 15 minutes since I hung up the phone with my parents. They hadn't just reacted, they had fired. My father knew where I worked. He knew the name of the HR director because I had mentioned it once in passing. He didn't need to use his name. He just needed to plant the seed. He knew that in a corporate environment, the mere accusation of instability was enough to tarnish a reputation. I stood in my kitchen, the smell of unmade tea drifting in the air. They were trying to get me fired. They were trying to cut off my income. If I lost my job, I would be vulnerable. I would be desperate. and desperate people need their families. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes were wide. I looked exactly like the unstable woman they were describing. I am not crazy, I whispered to my reflection. But as I said it, I realized that didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. The narrative mattered. And right now, they were writing the story of Willow Ward, the unhinged daughter, faster than I could read it. I did not sleep that night. The next morning, the HR meeting was a blur of humiliation. I sat in a glass-walled office while Linda Halloway, a woman I had shared lunch with, looked at me with guarded pity. I denied the allegations. I told them it was a family dispute. I offered to show them my phone logs to prove I hadn't made calls during work hours. They documented my denial. They told me the investigation would be closed if no further evidence arose, but the damage was done. I could see it in Linda's eyes. I was a risk now. I left work at noon. I couldn't focus. I drove straight to a therapist's office. I had found her online at 3 a.m. Dr. Aris. She specialized in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. I didn't go because I believed I was broken. I went because I needed a witness. I sat on her beige couch and told her everything. I told her about the video, the loan, the HR email. I need you to tell me if I'm crazy. I said, Doctor. Aris looked at me over her glasses. You are not crazy. Willow, she said, you are under siege. There is a difference. I hired her on the spot. I needed a medical professional to have a record of my sanity, dated and signed, before my family could drag me into a courtroom and claim I was incompetent. That evening, I got a text from a burner number. Safeway parking lot, row G, 8 p.m., alone. It was Ivy. I parked my car under a flickering street lamp. The Safeway lot was vast and half empty, the asphalt slick with rain. I saw Ivy's car, a white hatchback, parked near the cart return. I got into the passenger seat. Ivy jumped. She was wearing a hoodie pulled up over her head and dark sunglasses. Even though it was night, she looked ridiculous, like a teenager trying to buy beer. But up close, I saw the terror in her face. She had chewed her fingernails down to the quick. Did you bring your phone? She asked. It is in my bag. I said, turn it off. She said, please. I turned it off and showed her the black screen. Ivy let out a long, shaky breath. She slumped against the steering wheel. They know you know something, she whispered. Dad went nuclear after you called last night. He was throwing things. He broke the vase in the hallway. He filed a complaint with my HR. I said, he tried to get me fired. Ivy nodded miserably. I know. I heard him dictating the email to Mom. They used a VPN so it wouldn't trace back to the house. I looked at my sister. She was 27, but she looked 12. Why are you helping them? Ivy? I asked. Why are you letting them do this to me? I am not helping them, she hissed. I am surviving them. You don't get it. Willow, you left. You got your apartment. You have your job. I am still there. I am in the house. Why don't you leave? Because I can't, she cried. I have debt. Willow, real debt, not fake loans, student loans, credit cards. Dad pays for everything. If I leave, he cuts me off. He told me last night that if I talk to you, he will stop paying my car note. He said he will tell everyone about the thing. The thing? Ivy looked away. Tears leaked from under her sunglasses. The incident in college, she whispered. The shoplifting. I stared at her. My parents had bailed Ivy out of a minor theft charge when she was 19. It was a mistake. A stupid, youthful mistake. He holds that over you? I asked. That was 8 years ago. He says he has the police report. Ivy said, he says he will send it to my boss. He says he will ruin me. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. This was how they worked. They collected secrets like ammunition. Tell me about the group chat. I said. Ivy wiped her nose on her sleeve. It is called the Core. She said, Mom started it 3 years ago. It is her, Dad, Uncle Marcus, Seth, and Aunt Janine. And you? I said, and me, she admitted. But I just listen. They use it to coordinate. Coordinate what? Everything. Ivy said, the family image. If someone acts up, they discuss how to handle it. If Uncle Marcus needs money, they figure out who to borrow from. It is where they decide the truth. And the video? I asked. The one you sent me. That was a strategy session, Ivy said. They have been planning the Wardstone thing for 6 months. They want to sell Nana's duplex. Sell it? I asked. But Nana loves that place. She wants to leave it to the church. They don't care. Ivy said, they need the cash. Dad owes money. Bad money. To guys in the city. Gambling? Ivy nodded. He lost big on sports betting. Again, he needs $200,000 fast. The duplex is the only asset left. But Nana won't sell. So they formed Wardstone. They are going to transfer the deed to the LLC, pretending it is for tax protection. And then the LLC will sell the property. And since I am the manager of the LLC, I said, realizing the horror of the design, since you are the manager, Ivy said, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes, it will look like you sold it. My mouth fell open. It was perfect. It was diabolically perfect. They would steal the house, take the money, pay off the debts, and when Nana found out, they would point at the paperwork and say, Willow did it. Willow sold the house, and because they had already painted me as unstable and desperate for money, everyone would believe them. They are going to frame me for embezzling from our grandmother. I said, Ivy nodded, that is why Dad is so scared. If you blow it up now, before the sale goes through, he is dead. These guys, the loan sharks, they don't sue people. Willow, they hurt people. She grabbed my arm. Her fingers were cold. You have to let it go. Willow, just let them sell the duplex. Once Dad pays the debt, he will pay off the loan in your name. He promised. He promised? I laughed. A bitter, jagged sound. He promised to frame me for a felony. Ivy, that is the only promise he is keeping. I pulled my arm away. I am not letting it go. I said, Ivy recoiled. Willow, please. I opened the car door. The rain was coming down harder now. I'm going to burn it down. Ivy, all of it. And you need to decide which side of the fire you want to be standing on. I slammed the door and walked back to my car. I didn't look back. The next morning, I met Elias Vance at a coffee shop. I didn't want to go to his office. I felt like I was being watched. I told him about Wardstone. I told him about the duplex sale plan. We need to move, Vance said. He looked tired. He had a coffee stain on his tie, but his eyes were sharp. If they are trying to transfer the deed, they need Nana's signature, or a power of attorney that allows them to sign for her. They have a POA. I said, I saw the sticky note in the video. POA renewal. We need to see that document. Vance said. We drove to the county clerk's office. Vance filed an emergency request to view recent filings regarding Eleanor Ward. Because he was an attorney, and because he cited imminent elder abuse, the clerk expedited the search. It took an hour of sitting on a hard wooden bench, watching the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, the clerk called us over. Here it is, she said, sliding a photocopy across the counter. Filed 3 days ago, general power of attorney, granting Franklin Ward full authority over all real estate and financial assets. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Eleanor Ward. It was shaky. It looped in strange places. Nana had a very specific signature. She had gone to Catholic school. Her cursive was precise, even with the arthritis. This looked like a spider had crawled across the page in ink. That is not her signature. I said, Look at the notary stamp, Vance said, pointing to the seal. Prestige Mobile Notary Services. Commission number 899021. Signed, Timothy J. Gable. I took a picture of the document with my phone. Back in the car, Vance pulled out his laptop. I am looking up Timothy Gable. He said. He typed for a moment, then frowned. Okay, he is a valid notary. Based in Lake Briar. Let's give him a call. Vance put the phone on speaker. Prestige Mobile Notary. This is Tim. Mr. Gable. This is Elias Vance, attorney at law. I am inquiring about a notarization you performed on Tuesday regarding Eleanor Ward. There was a pause, a long, nervous pause. I don't recall that specific one off the top of my head. Tim said, "We have the document here." Vance said, "It is a power of attorney. The signature looks irregular. Mr. Gable, we are preparing to file an affidavit of fraud, unless, of course, you can verify the details of the signing. Look," Tim's voice cracked, "I didn't go to the facility. The woman, Mrs. Ward's daughter-in-law, she booked the appointment. She met me at the Starbucks on Main." "She met you?" Vance asked. "And Mrs. Eleanor Ward? Was she there?" "She said the old lady was sick." Tim stammered. "She said she couldn't leave the bed. She brought the papers already signed. She showed me the driver's license. She said it was urgent for medical insurance." "So you notarized a signature without the signer present?" Vance asked. His voice was lethal. "She seemed really stressed." Tim said, "She was crying. She gave me an extra $50 for the rush." "Look, man, don't report me. I just wanted to help." Vance hung up. He looked at me. "That is it," he said. "That is the smoking gun. They forged her signature. And your mother bribed a notary to stamp it. This document is void, and it is a felony. We drove to Cedar Hollow. I needed to see Nana. I needed to protect her. But when I got to my apartment that evening to change clothes before going to the facility, there was a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Uncle Marcus. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marcus was the big man of the family, 6'4", broad shoulders, a former linebacker who now sold insurance. He was the enforcer. I left the chain on the door and opened it 2 inches. "Willow?" Marcus said. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Open up. Honey, it is freezing out here. What do you want?" "Marcus?" I asked. "I just want to talk." He said, "Your dad is worried about you. He thinks you are having a breakdown. We all do." I brought some soup. He held up a Tupperware container. It looked innocent. It looked like family. "I am fine." "Marcus," I said, "go away." "Willow, listen to me," he said, leaning closer to the crack. His voice dropped. "We know you are stressed. We know about the job trouble. We just want to help. I have a paper here, just a simple guardianship form. It just lets us help you manage your accounts for a few months until you get back on your feet." I stared at him. They wanted me to sign myself over to them. They wanted legal control of me. If I signed a guardianship form, they could dismiss my lawyer. They could cancel the fraud alerts. They could throw me in a facility. "You people are insane," I whispered. "Open the door." "Willow," Marcus said. His voice wasn't nice anymore. It was a growl. "Don't make this hard. We are doing this for your own good. If you don't sign, Frank is going to call the police. He is going to tell them you are a danger to yourself. He will have you committed involuntarily. Get off my porch," I said. I tried to shut the door, but he jammed his foot in the gap. The chain pulled taut, the metal groaning. I screamed. It was a primal, involuntary sound. "Get out!" I slammed my shoulder against the door, crushing his foot. He yelled in pain and pulled back. I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt. I backed away, shaking. They were physically at my door. They were done with subtle. I called the police. I reported an attempted break-in. By the time the patrol car arrived, Marcus was gone. But I filed the report. I wanted it on the record. I didn't sleep at my apartment that night. I drove to a motel 2 towns over. I paid cash. The next morning, I went to Cedar Hollow. I had to see Nana. I had to tell her. She was in the activity room, painting a birdhouse. She looked frail. "Nana," I said, sitting down next to her. She looked at me. She saw the dark circles under my eyes. She saw the fear. "Willow," she said, "what is it?" "Nana," I asked, holding her hand, "did you sign a paper for Dad this week? A power of attorney?" "No," she said firmly. "I told you. I signed some insurance papers last week. That is all." "Nana," I said, taking a deep breath, "the papers weren't for insurance. They were to give Dad control of your money. And the duplex." Her eyes widened. The blue faded. replaced by a sharp, steel gray. He told me it was for Blue Cross. She said. He lied. Nana. She put down the paintbrush. Her hands were shaking. Why? She whispered. Why would he do that? Because he wants to sell the duplex. I said, he needs the money. Nana stared at the birdhouse. A single tear rolled down her cheek, traversing the map of wrinkles. That duplex isn't for him, she said softly. I know. I said, you use the rent for your bills. No, she said. I looked at her. What? I don't use the rent for my bills, she said. My pension covers the facility. The rent goes to the St. Jude's Scholarship Fund, for the adult education program, for single mothers going back to school. I stared at her. You have been donating the rent? I asked. For 10 years, she said. Since your grandfather died, that was our plan. We wanted to help people who were trying to rebuild their lives. She looked at me, and her expression hardened. Your father knows that. She said, he knows that money is for the church. He asked me for it 5 years ago, and I told him no. I told him it was God's money. I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. Stealing from me was one thing, stealing from his mother was another, but stealing from a scholarship fund for single mothers? It was a level of moral bankruptcy I hadn't imagined. He isn't just stealing a house, Nana, I said. He is stealing their tuition. Nana gripped my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Stop him, Willow, she said. You stop him. I will. I promised. I walked out of the facility. My phone buzzed. It was Ivy. Can we talk? Please? I am scared. I called her. Where are you? I asked. I am at the park, she said. I can't go home. Dad is losing it. He knows you went to the notary. Tim called him. Good. I said. Willow? Ivy said, her voice trembling. You don't understand. If he goes down, he is going to take everyone with him. He is talking about the Willow plan. The Willow plan? I asked. I thought it was just the credit thing, Ivy said. But I heard him on the phone with Uncle Marcus. It is bigger. I took a breath. I was standing in the parking lot of the nursing home, the wind whipping my hair across my face. Ivy, I said, you need to listen to me very carefully. I am listening. I have the video. I said, silence. I didn't delete it. Ivy, I saved it. I have it on 3 hard drives. I have a transcript. My lawyer has it. Ivy let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Oh my God, she whispered. And if they try to touch Nana's house? I said. Or if they try to come to my apartment again, I'm going to play it. In court. You can't, Ivy whispered. If you play that video. Willow, you don't know what is in the rest of the chat. What do you mean? The Willow plan isn't just about the money, Ivy said. It is about the medical records. What medical records? The ones Mom forged, Ivy said. From when you were a teenager, to prove you have a history of delusions, they have been building a file on you since you were 16, just in case. I felt the ground drop out from under me. Since I was 16, they hadn't just turned on me recently, they had been keeping me as a spare part, a contingency plan, for half my life. I gripped the phone, then let them bring the file. I said, because I am bringing the video. I hung up. I got into my car. I was done hiding in motels. I was done being afraid of the doorbell. They had a plan. But I had the truth. And for the first time in my life, I realized that the truth was not a shield. It was a sword. The conference room in Elias Vance's office was windowless and smelled of lemon polish and old paper. It was the kind of room where bad news was delivered, and I had received plenty of it over the last 48 hours. Across the table sat a woman named Karen, a forensic accountant Elias had brought in to trace the wires. She was small, severe, and wore glasses on a chain. She treated numbers with a reverence most people reserved for religious texts. She slid a thick binder toward me. I have mapped the activity, Karen said. Her voice was dry, devoid of pity. It is a classic bleed pattern. Small test charges first. $10 here, $20 there. just to see if the authorized user notices. When there is no pushback, the volume increases. She pointed to a timeline printed on a landscape sheet. Look at the dates. Ms. Ward, she said. I looked. December 24th, November 26th, July 4th. I felt a cold recognition settle in my stomach. Christmas Eve. I said, Thanksgiving, the 4th of July barbecue. Karen nodded. Identity theft is usually committed by strangers in internet cafes in other countries. But when the dates align with federal holidays and family gatherings, it is almost always domestic. She tapped the entry for December 24th. On Christmas Eve, at 7 in the evening, a request was made to reset the password for your primary email account, she said. It was initiated from an IP address in Harbor Glen. I remembered that night. We were at my parents' house. I was in the kitchen, helping my mother dry the good crystal. My phone had been on the charger in the living room. My father had been sitting in there, watching It's a Wonderful Life. He had reset my password while I was drying his wine glasses. And here, Karen continued, pointing to July, the 4th of July. You were at the lake house? Yes, I whispered. There was a change of address request filed with the post office that morning. She said, diverting your bank statements to a P.O. box in West Alder. The confirmation code was sent to a phone number that was added to your carrier account that same day. I stared at the timeline. It wasn't just fraud. It was a diary of my family interactions. Every time I had gone over there, every time I had hugged them, every time I had tried to be the good daughter. They had used my physical presence as a distraction to pick my digital pockets. They hugged me with one hand and typed my social security number with the other. It is a betrayal of intimacy, Elias said from the corner of the room. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. That is why it works. You don't check your credit report after Christmas dinner. You trust the people passing the gravy. Karen flipped the page. We also found the flow for the Wardstone entity. She said, it is crude, but effective. The rent checks from the duplex are deposited into a Wardstone business account. From there, 70% is transferred to an account held by a debt consolidation firm. Consolidation? I asked. Gambling debts, Karen said flatly. The firm specializes in high-risk recovery. But here's the interesting part. The other 30% goes to a company called New Horizons Recovery. I frowned. What is that? It is a program for addiction management, Karen said, specifically for compulsive gambling. I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest. My father had sworn, 5 years ago, that he was done. He had cried at the kitchen table. He had sworn on my grandmother's Bible that he had stopped betting on the ponies, stopped playing the spread. He hadn't stopped. He had just found a new way to fund it, and he was paying for his recovery program with stolen money. The irony would have been funny if it weren't destroying my life. I closed the binder. So he is stealing from his mother to pay for the cure to the disease that makes him steal. I said, and he is using your name to sign the checks. Elias added. I left the office feeling heavy, as if gravity had doubled. I walked to my car. Checking my phone out of habit, there was a notification, a text message. It was not from Ivy. It was not from my parents. The number was unfamiliar. Area code 555, a spoofed number. There was no text, just a video file. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew I shouldn't watch it. I knew it was poison, but I also knew that information was the only currency I had left. I sat in the driver's seat and pressed play. The video was short, 10 seconds. It was a recording of the group chat again, the core. My mother was on the screen. She looked angry. Her face was flushed, her eyes hard and bright. She was holding a coffee cup, gesturing aggressively at the camera. If she goes legal, we go social, she said. The delivery was crisp, practiced. We do not fight her in court. We fight her at the nursing home. We fight her at the office. We tell people she is unsafe. My father's voice came from off-screen. Unsafe how? Unsafe around Nana. My mother said. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We say she gets agitated. We say she has been asking Nana for money. We plant the seed that Willow is spiraling. By the time she tries to file anything, she will just look like a desperate daughter lashing out because we cut her off. The clip ended. I stared at the black screen. If she goes legal, we go social. It was a declaration of total war. They weren't just defending their theft. They were preparing to salt the earth of my reputation. They were willing to brand me as dangerous, a danger to my own grandmother, to protect their scam. I looked at the number again. Who sent this? Ivy? Was she using a burner? Or was it someone else? The outline of the core included my Uncle Marcus and Aunt Janine. Was one of them turning? Or was there someone else watching? I didn't have time to solve the mystery. I had to go to work. But when I walked into the office the next morning, the atmosphere had shifted. It is a subtle thing. Office politics. It is the silence that falls when you walk into the break room. It is the way people look at their screens a little too intently. Linda from HR called me in at 10 o'clock. "Willow," she said. She didn't offer me a seat. "We have received another complaint." I stood by the door, my hands clasped in front of me to hide the tremor. "Let me guess." I said, "An anonymous source claims I was erratic on the phone yesterday? Or perhaps that I was seen yelling in the parking lot?" Linda pursed her lips. "The complaint alleges that you have been using company printers to produce personal legal documents related to a family dispute," she said, "and that you were overheard making threatening comments about your parents to a colleague. I haven't spoken to anyone here about my family." I said. Linda slid a piece of paper across the desk. "It was a printout of an email. This was sent to our general ethics inbox," she said. "It details a conversation you supposedly had in the elevator." I read the email. It was fiction. Pure, creative fiction. It claimed I had told a Jane Doe that I was going to make them pay and that I didn't care who got hurt. It was the social strategy in action. My mother knew I took the elevator. She knew the rhythm of my day. She was throwing sand in the gears of my employment. I looked up at Linda. "Linda," I said, keeping my voice steady, even though I wanted to scream, "I am being targeted by a coordinated harassment campaign. I have legal counsel. I am currently in the process of documenting identity theft and fraud committed against me. These complaints are retaliation." Linda looked uncomfortable. She was a bureaucrat, not a detective. She just wanted the problem to go away. "Willow, we value you," she said, "but these distractions, they are becoming a liability. We need you to focus on your work. If there is another incident—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I nodded. "I understand." I said, "I would like to request that all future allegations be provided to me in writing. With the date and time of the alleged incidents, I will be forwarding them to my attorney as evidence of harassment." Linda blinked. She hadn't expected that. She expected me to cry. She expected me to beg. "Of course," she said stiffly. I walked out of her office. I felt like I was walking on a wire over a canyon. One slip, one raised voice, one teary outburst, and I would confirm their narrative. I had to be a robot. I had to be made of steel. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal door and breathed until the spots in front of my vision faded. If you break, they win. I washed my face, reapplied my lipstick, and went back to my desk. At 5 o'clock, I drove to Cedar Hollow. I needed to secure the perimeter around Nana. When I arrived, the front desk was empty. I walked straight to the administrative wing. I had an appointment with the new administrator, a man named Mr. Henderson. He had taken over 2 months ago after the facility failed a state compliance audit. He was a stickler for rules. That was my only hope. I knocked on his doorframe. "Mr. Henderson?" He looked up. He was a balding man with kind eyes and a tie that was slightly too short. "Ms. Ward," he said. "Please, come in." I sat down. "I am here to clarify the visitation and decision-making protocols for my grandmother, Eleanor Ward," I said. "Mr." Henderson nodded slowly. He opened a file on his desk. "Yes," he said. "I was looking at this file this morning. There has been a lot of activity regarding your grandmother's profile recently." "What kind of activity?" I asked. He turned the monitor so I could see. Yesterday. A request was processed to change the primary decision contact. He said, it was changed from Eleanor Ward herself to Lydia Ward. I felt the blood drain from my face. Did Nana sign a consent form for that? I asked. Mr. Henderson hesitated. The notes say the request came via phone. The caller cited the new power of attorney on file, the forged one. I said, Mr. Henderson looked at me. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a microfiber cloth. Miss Ward, he said carefully. In my line of work, you develop an instinct for family dynamics. Usually, when a family rushes to change the contact info and restricts access, which was the second part of the request, it is because they are worried about the quality of care. But sometimes they are trying to hide something. I finished. He nodded. Your mother called me personally. He said, she was very charming. She told me you were going through a difficult time. She suggested that your visits were upsetting Eleanor. She asked if we could limit your access. For Eleanor's safety. I gripped the arms of the chair. They were executing the plan perfectly. Unsafe around Nana. Mr. Henderson put his glasses back on. I told her that unless there is a court order or a documented incident of aggression, we do not ban family members, he said, especially not granddaughters who have been visiting every Sunday for 5 years. He looked me in the eye. I also reviewed the power of attorney they submitted. He said, the notary stamp is from a mobile service in Lake Briar. We have had issues with that particular notary before. He knew, Mr. Henderson. I said, my family is attempting to liquidate my grandmother's assets without her knowledge. They are trying to isolate her so she doesn't find out. I suspected as much. He said quietly, your grandmother is lucid. Ms. Ward, she is sharp. When I asked her this morning if she wanted her daughter to make her decisions, she laughed. She said, Lydia can't even decide what salad dressing to buy. I smiled. It was a weak, watery smile. But it was real. What do I do? I asked. File a grievance, he said. A formal one, with the state licensing board and with our internal compliance officer. Put it on the record that you contest the power of attorney. Once there is a formal dispute, we freeze everything. No changes to the care plan, no transfer of medical records, no barring of visitors. We lock it down until a judge tells us otherwise. He slid a form across the desk. Fill this out, he said. Today, I filled it out. My hand was steady. Thank you, I said. He stood up and shook my hand. Ms. Ward, he said, your family has been unusually interested in controlling the narrative. But in this building, the patient controls the narrative. As long as Eleanor can speak, she is the boss. I walked out of his office feeling the first glimmer of hope I had felt in days. They had charm, they had lies, but I had the rules, and for once, the bureaucracy was on my side. But the war wasn't over. It was just moving to a new front. I met Elias at his office late that night. He had the forensic accountant's final report on the rent diversion. It gets worse, Elias said. How can it get worse? I asked. They are already stealing from a scholarship fund. He pointed to a line item. The rent checks from the last 3 months weren't just cashed. He said, they were used as collateral. Collateral for what? For a short-term, high-interest loan. Elias said, a hard money loan, taken out by Wardstone Property Solutions. I stared at him. They took out a loan against the rental income? I asked. Yes, Elias said. $20,000 at 18% interest. Why? To pay the arrears on the duplex mortgage, Elias said. I froze. The duplex is paid off. I said, Nana paid it off in 1998. I have seen the deed. Elias shook his head. He looked grim. They took out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, on the duplex 2 years ago. He said, your father forged Nana's signature then. 2. He maxed it out. $80,000. And he hasn't made a payment in 6 months. The bank was threatening foreclosure. That is why they are so desperate to sell. They aren't just trying to cash out. They are trying to bury the evidence of the mortgage before the bank takes the house. I felt physically nauseous. The room seemed to spin. They had been bleeding her dry for years. The Willow plan wasn't just about the current debt. It was a cover-up for a decade of theft. If the house was foreclosed on, Nana would find out about the mortgage, but if they sold it quickly, paid off the HELOC, and pocketed the difference, she would never know. And they were going to use my name to do it. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark parking lot. I am done. I said, "Done?" Elias asked. "I am done waiting." I said, "I am done reacting. I want to end this. What do you want to do?" I turned around. "I want to invite them to a meeting." I said, "A meeting?" Elias frowned. "Willow, that is dangerous. A resolution meeting." I said, "I will tell them I want to settle. I will tell them I am overwhelmed and I just want peace. I will tell them I am ready to sign whatever they want. You want to trap them." Elias said, "I want them to say it to my face." I said, "I want them to put the paper in front of me. I want to see them smile when they think they have won. And then I want to crush them." Elias looked at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he smiled. "I know a mediator," he said. "We can wire the room." We set it up for Friday. I sent the email to my parents. I kept it brief. I sounded defeated. "Mom, Dad, I can't do this anymore. The stress is too much. I want to talk. I want to fix this. Can we meet with a mediator just to get everything on paper so we can move forward?" "I just want to be a family again," they replied in 10 minutes. "Of course, honey, we love you. We just want to help." The meeting was held in a sterile office suite in downtown Lake Briar. The mediator was a woman named Sarah, who Elias had briefed. She knew the score. She was there to witness, not to mediate. I arrived early. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table. Elias sat next to me, silent and imposing. My parents arrived 10 minutes late. They made an entrance. My mother was wearing a soft pastel cardigan, her concerned mother costume. My father was in a suit, looking grave and dignified. Ivy trailed behind them, looking like a ghost. "Willow," my mother said, rushing over to hug me. I stiffened, but I let her do it. She smelled of expensive perfume and betrayal. "Oh, look at you. You look so thin." "I am okay." "Mom," I said. My father nodded to Elias. "Mr. Vance," he said, "I hope you are not here to complicate things. This is a family matter. I am just here to ensure the agreement is properly memorialized," Elias said smoothly. We sat down. My father took the lead. He placed a folder on the table. "Willow," he said, clasping his hands, "we are so glad you came to your senses. We hate fighting with you. You know that. I know." "Dad," I said. I looked down at my hands. I just saw the credit report and I panicked. "Of course you did." My mother soothed. "You have always been high-strung. We understand. That is why we handled it the way we did. We didn't want to burden you with the details." "The details," I repeated. My father opened the folder. He slid a document across the table. "This is a family financial support agreement," he said. "It is very standard. It simply states that you acknowledge the loans taken out in your name were for the benefit of the family estate, and that you agree to maintain them until such time as the underlying assets, Nana's duplex, can be liquidated to satisfy the obligations." I looked at the paper. It was a confession disguised as a contract. It would make me legally liable for the fraud. It would retroactively authorize everything they had done. "And the Wardstone Company?" I asked softly. My father smiled, a benevolent, patient smile. "That is just a holding vehicle," he said. "We made you the manager because we trust you. Willow, we wanted you to have a stake in the family business. It is an honor, really, an honor." I said, "Yes," my mother added. "Most parents wouldn't trust their daughter with such responsibility, especially given your recent history." She glanced at the mediator, planting the flag of my instability. I picked up the pen. My parents leaned forward. I could feel their hunger. It was a palpable thing in the room. They were so close. Just one signature. And they were safe. They could sell the house, pay the sharks, and leave me holding the bag. I held the pen over the paper. "I have just one question," I said. My father's smile tightened at the edges. What is it? Honey? Why is Nana's rent money going into your account? I asked. The silence in the room was absolute. The smile fell off my father's face like a mask that had lost its string. Excuse me? He said. I looked up. I didn't look down at my hands anymore. I looked him dead in the eye. The rent. I said, from the duplex. The money that is supposed to go to the St. Jude's Scholarship Fund. Why is it being wired to a gambling recovery program in your name? My mother gasped. Willow, she cried. How dare you? And why? I continued, my voice rising just enough to fill the room. Did you forge Nana's signature on a HELOC 2 years ago? Why is the house she thinks is paid off actually $80,000 in debt? My father stood up. His face was a dark, violent red. Who have you been talking to? He demanded. You have no right to snoop into my private affairs. I have every right. I said, you put my name on the company. You made it my business. This is exactly what we were talking about, my mother shouted. Turning to the mediator, she is delusional. She is making things up. I didn't make up the bank records. Mom, I said. I slid the forensic accountant's report across the table. It hit the wood with a heavy thud, and I didn't make up the video. My father froze. What video? He whispered. The one Ivy sent me. I said, the one where you planned all of this. The one where you said, if she panics, we flip it and call it a mental health thing. I looked at Ivy. She was staring at the table, tears streaming down her face. I have it. Dad, I said, I have the video. I have the recording of Mom threatening to go social. I have the affidavit from the notary you bribed. I have everything. My father looked at the report. He looked at Elias, who was smiling a very sharp, very lawyerly smile. He slowly sat back down. He looked like a balloon that had been punctured. What do you want? He asked. His voice was unrecognizable. It was the voice of a beaten man. I want you to resign as Nana's power of attorney. I said, I want you to sign the duplex over to a trust controlled by an independent fiduciary. I want you to pay off the loans in my name within 30 days, and I want you to stay away from me, forever. And if we don't? My mother hissed. She was not beaten yet. She was a viper in a corner. Then I pressed play. I said, in court, and then I give the tape to the district attorney. My mother looked at my father. Do something. Frank? My father didn't move. He knew. He knew the game was over. He knew that the one thing he couldn't survive, the destruction of his reputation, was sitting in my pocket. He picked up the pen. I walked out of the building 10 minutes later. My legs felt like jelly. I leaned against my car, breathing in the cold air. The door of the building opened, and Ivy came out. She was sobbing. She walked over to me. Willow, she said. I looked at her. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a terrible, exhausting sadness. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Why didn't you tell me about the HELOC? About the gambling? Ivy wiped her face. Because I was scared. She said, scared of what? That he would cut you off? No, she said. She looked up at me, and her eyes were full of a frantic, desperate honesty. I was scared that if I didn't help them target you, they would turn on me. I stared at her. What? I tried to leave the Corps last year, she whispered. Mom told me that if I walked away, she would tell my fiancé about the shoplifting. She said she would ruin my wedding. She said they needed a villain. They needed a scapegoat to explain where the money went. She took a breath. I thought if I kept you as the target, I wouldn't be next. She looked at me, begging for forgiveness. I looked at my sister, the sister who had sent me the video, the sister who had lured me into the trap, not because she hated me, but because she was being held hostage by the same people. It made horrible sense. It was the logic of a prisoner. I didn't hate her, but I couldn't save her, not if she wasn't willing to walk out of the cell. Get in the car. Ivy. I said, where are we going? She asked. We are going to the police station. I said. She froze. I can't, she whispered. They will ruin me. They have already ruined you. Ivy, I said gently. They turned you into an accomplice. The only way out is to stop playing. I opened the passenger door. Ivy looked back at the building, where our parents were still sitting in the ruins of their scheme. Then she looked at me. She got in the car. I started the engine. I had won the battle, but as I pulled out onto the street, I knew the war wasn't over. My mother's threat still echoed in my ears. Even if Willow wins, we win, because she'll lose her family. She was right. I had lost them. But looking at Ivy in the passenger seat, buckling her seatbelt with shaking hands, I realized something else. I hadn't lost my family. I had just escaped a cult, and now I was going to make sure they never hurt anyone else again. The week before the hearing felt less like legal preparation and more like preoperative sterilization. I was scrubbing my life clean, organizing every receipt, every email, every timestamp, trying to remove any bacteria that my family could infect. I stopped sleeping. It was not a poetic insomnia where I stared at the moon and contemplated justice. It was a jagged, chemical wakefulness. I would lie in bed until 3 a.m, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, terrified that I had missed a document or forgotten a date. When I did sleep, I dreamt of paperwork. I dreamt of my father standing over my bed, shredding my birth certificate into a wastebasket while my mother laughed. I was functioning because I had no other option. I was a machine built of caffeine and adrenaline. On Tuesday, 3 days before the court date, the financial bomb they had planted finally detonated. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a logistics spreadsheet, when the receptionist, barely 22 and terrified of conflict, transferred a call to my line. "Willow?" she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There is a man on line 2. He says it is urgent. He says it is about a debt." My stomach dropped. I picked up the receiver. "This is Willow Ward." "Ms. Ward," a voice barked. "This is Agent Miller from Apex Recovery Services. We are attempting to collect a debt of $15,420 on behalf of Harbor Glen Community Credit Union. This account is now 60 days delinquent." I froze. 60 days. They had timed it perfectly. The loan had been opened in August. They had made the minimum payments for 2 months to keep it under the radar, and then they had stopped. "Mr. Miller," I said, keeping my voice low so my cubicle neighbor wouldn't hear. "This debt is fraudulent. I have filed a police report. I have disputed this with the credit union. Ms. Ward, we have heard that before." Miller interrupted. "The fact is, your name is on the note. The funds were dispersed. We are prepared to garnish your wages starting next week if a payment plan is not established today. We will be contacting your payroll department to verify employment. Do not contact my payroll department," I said, my voice shaking. "Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, we can and we will confirm employment for garnishment," he said, "unless you want to settle. We can settle today for $12,000. I hung up. I sat there, my hand gripping the phone, feeling the heat rise up my neck. They knew this would happen. My father knew exactly when the delinquency notices would start. He knew that having a debt collector call my workplace was the ultimate humiliation for me. He was betting that the shame would break me. He was betting that I would pay $12,000 just to make the phone stop ringing, just to keep my boss from finding out I was a financial risk. I wanted to pay it. For 10 seconds. I seriously considered draining my savings just to make the noise stop. But then I remembered the video. If she panics, we flip it. This was the panic point. I stood up. I walked to the HR office. I knocked on the door. "Linda?" I said. She looked up, wary. "I need to let you know that a collections agency might call regarding a fraudulent loan that is currently the subject of a criminal investigation." I said, "My attorney is handling it. I just wanted you to hear it from me first." I didn't apologize. I didn't cry. I just stated the fact. Linda looked at me, surprised by my steadiness. "Okay, Willow," she said. "Thank you for telling me." I walked back to my desk. I wasn't going to let them shame me into submission. That night, I met Ivy in the back row of a movie theater. It was her idea. She said it was the only place she felt safe from the digital eyes of the core, The theater was playing a loud superhero movie. We sat in the dark, the blue light of the screen washing over our faces. Ivy looked terrible. She had lost weight. Her hands were tucked into the sleeves of her oversized hoodie. "Here," she whispered. She slid a phone into my hand. It was an old iPhone 8. The screen cracked in the corner. I recognized it immediately. It was the admin phone my mother used for household management, ordering groceries, scheduling the pool cleaner, and apparently destroying her daughters. "Mom got a new one yesterday," Ivy whispered. "She threw this one in the junk drawer. She thinks she wiped it." "Did she?" I asked. Ivy shook her head. "She deleted the apps, but she didn't clear the cloud backup. I restored it. I looked at the device. It felt heavy, like a grenade." "What is on here?" I asked. "Go to the messages," Ivy said. "Look for the thread titled Willow Cover Story." I unlocked the phone. The passcode was my birthday. The irony stung. I found the thread. It was a conversation between my mother, my father, and Aunt Janine. I scrolled back to July. "Lydia. Just sent the text to Susan from Willow's office. I used the burner. Told her, hey, just a heads up. Willow has been seeming really manic lately. I know she handles the accounts. Just wanted you to watch out for her. Frank. Good. Subtle. Did you use the concerned friend angle?" Lydia. "Of course. I signed it, a friend who cares. Susan is a gossip. She will tell everyone by lunch." I felt the air leave my lungs. Susan. Susan was the receptionist who had transferred the collections call today. Susan was the one who always looked at me with pity. My mother hadn't just waited for rumors to start. She had scripted them. She had bought a burner phone, texted my coworkers pretending to be a concerned third party, and planted the idea that I was mentally unstable months before the loan was even opened. I scrolled down. August 12th. Frank. Loan approved. Funds in the account. Lydia. Excellent. I will start the drip campaign on the family side. I will tell Cousin Beth that Willow asked to borrow money for medical bills. That sets the stage for the instability narrative. Janine. Make sure you mention she was crying. People always believe it if you say she was crying. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. They were writers in a room, breaking the story of my life, and they were writing it as a tragedy where I was the villain. But then I saw something else. September 4th. Frank. Spoke to the realtor at Alder Finch. Told him the duplex is too much upkeep for Nana. He is biting. Says he can move it fast. Lydia. Did you mention the price? Frank. I told him we would take $300,000. Cash offers only. Quick close. Lydia. And Nana? Frank. I told him Nana is confused. That I have the POA. He didn't ask to see her. He just wants the commission. I looked at Ivy. Alder Finch. I whispered. Yeah, Ivy said, staring at the screen where a superhero was destroying a city. That is the real estate firm in town. They were going to sell it next week. I took the phone. I have to give this to Elias. I said, be careful. Ivy said, if they know I gave that to you, they won't know. I promised. I found it. In the trash. The next morning, Elias Vance issued a subpoena to Alder Finch Realty. We didn't have to wait long. The realtor, a man named Mr. Finch, was not a criminal mastermind. He was a salesman who wanted a commission, not an indictment. When Elias called him and mentioned fraudulent conveyance and elder abuse, Mr. Finch sang like a bird. He sent over the emails. There it was, in black and white, my father. Using an email address I didn't recognize, but which was clearly him, pushing for a quiet sale. My mother is not up for visitors. The email read, she is very confused. It is best if we handle the paperwork. I have the power of attorney. We need to close this before the end of the month. Mr. Finch admitted in a sworn affidavit that my mother, Lydia, had accompanied Frank to the office. She had introduced herself as the authorized family representative. She had cried. She had told Mr. Finch that the upkeep of the duplex was killing her poor mother and that selling it was an act of mercy. She had performed the role of the grieving daughter to facilitate the theft of her mother's legacy. We had them. We had the unauthorized loan. We had the forged POA. We had the realtor's testimony. We had the texts. But my father had one card left to play. He called me at 11 o'clock the night before the hearing. I was in my kitchen, drinking lukewarm tea, staring at the stack of evidence binders. The phone rang. Dad, I shouldn't have answered. Elias told me not to answer, but I picked it up. Willow? His voice was weak, trembling. It sounded like the voice of an old, broken man. What do you want, Dad? I asked. I am at the hospital. Willow, he rasped. My heart skipped a beat. Despite everything, despite the theft, the lies, the gaslighting, the reflex was still there. He was my father. The hospital? I asked. What happened? Chest pains, he said. The stress. It is too much. My heart isn't what it used to be. I am lying here, hooked up to these machines, and I'm just thinking, how did we get here? You know how we get here, I said, hardening my voice. You stole my identity. I made mistakes. Willow, he cried, his voice cracking. I know that. I am a flawed man. I got in over my head. The gambling. It is a sickness. You know that. I didn't want to hurt you. I just needed a bridge. Just a temporary bridge to get us back to safety. He was crying now. Deep, ragged sobs. I am so sorry. Willow, I am so scared. If I go to jail, I will die in there. Do you want that? Do you want your father to die in a cage? I gripped the counter. The guilt was a physical weight. Pressing down on my shoulders, he sounded so pathetic, so small. I don't want you to die. Dad, I whispered. Then help me, he begged. Just drop the suit. We can fix the money. I will sell the car. I will work until I drop. Just don't let them take me. Please, Willow. You are my girl, my strong girl. I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike. I remembered him carrying me on his shoulders. Maybe. I started, don't make me the villain. Willow, he said softly. My eyes snapped open. The phrase hung in the air. Don't make me the villain. It was the same phrase from the video, the same phrase he had used in the planning session. If she pushes back, we tell her not to make us the villain. It wasn't a plea. It was a line from a script. He wasn't at the hospital. Or if he was, it was a performance. He was using his own mortality as a bargaining chip because he knew it was the only thing I valued more than the truth. The sadness in my chest evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I am not making you the villain. Dad, I said. Willow? He asked. Hearing the shift in my tone, you cast yourself in that role a long time ago. I said, I am just the audience finally waking up. I hung up the phone. I unplugged it from the wall. The morning of the hearing. The sky was a bruised purple. It was raining. A hard, driving rain that stripped the leaves from the trees. I drove to Cedar Hollow to pick up Nana. She had insisted on coming. Elias had tried to talk her out of it. He said she could testify via video. He said the stress might be too much, but Nana had looked him in the eye and said, I am 84 years old. I have survived pneumonia, a broken hip, and the death of my husband. I can survive looking my son in the face. When I arrived, she was waiting in the lobby. She was wearing her Sunday suit, a navy blue ensemble with a pearl brooch. Her hair was perfectly set. She looked like a queen going to an execution. You look beautiful. Nana, I said, I look like I'm going to war. She corrected. I helped her into the car. She sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded over her purse. Willow, she said as we drove toward the courthouse. Yes, Nana, I want you to know something. What is it? I knew he was weak, she said. She was looking out the window at the passing rain. I knew your father was weak. I always covered for him. When he broke the neighbor's window, when he failed his classes, when he lost his first job, I always fixed it. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were fierce. I thought I was helping him, she said, but I wasn't. I was training him. I taught him that there are no consequences. It is not your fault. Nana, I said, Yes, it is, she said firmly. Part of it is. And today, I am going to stop helping him. She took a deep breath. They thought I was already gone, she whispered. That is what hurts the most. They didn't wait for me to die. They just decided I was dead enough to loot. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We are going to show them you are very much alive. I said. We arrived at the courthouse. Elias met us at the entrance. He looked tired but confident. Your parents are already inside, he said. They brought a lawyer, a guy named Sterling. He is a strip mall shark. He is going to try to intimidate you. Let him try, I said. As we walked toward the courtroom, Ivy appeared from a side hallway. She was with a man in a cheap suit, Sterling's associate. Presumably, Willow, Ivy said. She stepped away from the man. I stopped. Ivy looked torn. Her eyes darted between me and the courtroom doors. They offered me a deal, she whispered. What kind of deal? I asked. Sterling, she said, jerking her head toward the lawyer. He said if I testify that you were confused, that you misunderstood the loan, that they will pay off my student loans and my credit cards. They will wipe my debt clean. I looked at my sister. $30,000 of debt. That was the price of her integrity. And what if you don't? I asked. Then they cut me off. She said, and Dad releases the shoplifting report. I looked at her. I saw the fear. I saw the temptation. It was an easy out. Just say Willow is crazy, and the debt disappears. Just lie one more time, and she is free. But then I saw something else. I saw the exhaustion. She was tired of running. She was tired of the leash. What are you going to do? Ivy? I asked. She looked at Nana. Nana looked back at her, her expression unreadable. If I testify, Ivy asked, her voice trembling. If I tell the truth, will you hate me if they go to jail? I looked at the courtroom doors. Beyond them sat the people who had given us life and then tried to consume it. I will hate what they did. I said honestly, I will hate that they forced us into this room. I will hate the years we lost. But I don't want to hate you. Ivy, I want a sister. Ivy nodded. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Okay, she whispered. She turned and walked into the courtroom. She didn't sit with our parents. She sat in the back row, alone. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Elias and Nana. My parents were at the defense table. My father wasn't at the hospital. He was sitting right there, looking healthy enough to glare at me. My mother was next to him, wearing black, looking tragic and victimized. The judge entered, the Honorable Justice Higgins. He was an older man with a face like a carved rock. We began. But before the opening statements could even start, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. I pulled it out, keeping it under the table. A text message. From the unknown number again. Core Observer. It was a video file. I shouldn't have watched it, but I couldn't help it. I muted the volume and pressed play. It was a clip from the group chat, dated yesterday. My mother was smiling. She was holding a glass of wine. She looked relaxed, triumphant. Let her have her day in court, she said to the camera. Let her drag us through the mud. It doesn't matter. My father's voice asked, why doesn't it matter? Because even if Willow wins, we win, my mother said, her smile widening into something predatory. She thinks she is fighting for money, but she is fighting for orphanhood. If she wins, she loses her parents. She loses the family. She will be all alone with her victory, and Willow hates being alone. The clip ended. I stared at the phone. The realization hit me like a physical blow. It was never just about the money. The money was the mechanism, but the goal was control. They were banking on my fear of abandonment. They believed, truly believed, that I would rather be abused than be alone. They thought that even if I won the legal battle, the price, losing them, would be so high that I would eventually come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, just to have a family again. They were weaponizing their own love. They were holding their affection hostage. I looked across the aisle at my mother. She caught my eye. She gave me a small, sad smile, the kind that said, "Come back to us. Stop this nonsense." I looked at Nana, sitting beside me, her back straight as a rod. I looked at Ivy, alone in the back row, terrified but present. My mother was wrong. I wasn't losing my family. I was shedding a skin. I was cutting off a gangrenous limb to save the body. I wasn't alone. I put the phone away. I put my hand on Nana's arm. I looked at Elias. I am ready, I said. Elias nodded. He stood up. Your Honor, he said, we are here to prove that the defendants, Franklin and Lydia Ward, engaged in a systemic conspiracy to defraud their daughter and their mother, using forgery, identity theft, and psychological manipulation, and we brought receipts. The air in the courtroom shifted. It became electric. My father shifted in his seat. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He realized that the script wasn't working. The Willow plan had failed. The audience wasn't clapping. The audience was armed, and the show was about to end. The courtroom in Lake Briar County smelled of floor wax and anxious perspiration. It was a sterile, windowless box designed to process the wreckage of human relationships, and today, it was processing mine. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded on top of a stack of binders that contained the forensic accounting of my family's betrayal. Elias Vance sat next to me, looking calm and predatory in a dark gray suit. Nana was on my other side, her posture rigid, her face set in a mask of dignified fury. The doors at the back of the room opened, and my parents walked in. If I hadn't known them, if I hadn't spent 32 years decoding their micro-expressions, I would have thought they were arriving at a wedding. My mother was wearing a cream-colored suit that suggested piety and warmth. My father wore his Sunday best, a navy blazer with gold buttons. They weren't walking like defendants facing allegations of fraud and elder abuse. They were walking like hosts. They smiled at the bailiff. They nodded graciously to the court clerk. My mother actually waved to a neighbor who was sitting in the gallery, a woman she played bridge with, mouthing hello, darling, as if we were at a charity brunch. They were performing. They were projecting an image of unshakable respectability, daring the court to look past the veneer. They took their seats at the defense table. Their lawyer, Mr. Sterling, leaned in and whispered something to my father. My father laughed, a rich, hearty sound that echoed in the quiet room. It was a power move. He was telling me, without saying a word, that he wasn't afraid. He was telling me that I was still just his daughter, the girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee, and he was still the man who fixed everything. I felt a tremor start in my hands. Elias leaned over. Don't look at them, he whispered. Look at the judge. I fixed my eyes on the bench as the Honorable Justice Higgins entered. He was a man with a face like a dried apple and eyes that looked like they had seen every lie ever told. The proceedings began. Because this was a hearing regarding the emergency suspension of a power of attorney and a petition for guardianship review. The rules were slightly looser than a criminal trial, but the stakes felt infinitely higher. Nana spoke first. She refused the offer to testify from her seat. She walked to the stand, leaning heavily on her cane, but refusing the bailiff's arm. She swore the oath on the Bible. Her voice was thin but clear. Mrs. Ward, Elias asked gently, did you sign a document on October 12th, renewing your son's power of attorney? No. Nana said, did you authorize the creation of a company called Wardstone Property Solutions? I have never heard that name until last week. She said, did you instruct your son to sell your duplex in West Alder? Nana straightened her spine. I did not. She said, that property is intended for the street, Jude's scholarship fund. My son knows that. He has known that for 10 years. Elias paused. He let the words hang in the air. Mrs. Ward, how does it make you feel to see these documents with your signature on them? Nana looked past Elias. She looked directly at my father. Frank wasn't looking at her. He was studying his fingernails. It makes me feel like I failed, Nana said softly. Her voice cracked. A hairline fracture in a porcelain vase. I raised my children to be better than this. I raised them to be honest. I don't know who these people are." The room was silent. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, shaking her head as if Nana were the one who was confused, as if she were pitying Nana's dementia rather than shrinking from her accusation. "Mr. Sterling stood up for the cross-examination. "Mrs. Ward," he said, his voice dripping with condescending syrup. "We know this is hard for you, at your age. Memory can be a tricky thing. Isn't it true that you often forget where you put your glasses?" "I forget my glasses," Nana snapped. "I don't forget who owns my house." Sterling smiled indulgently. "But you have been under a lot of stress, haven't you? Your granddaughter, Willow, she has been bringing you a lot of upsetting news lately, telling you stories about theft, telling you the family is against you. She is telling me the truth," Nana said, or, Sterling countered. "Is it possible that Willow is the one who is confused? We have affidavits here stating that Willow has been acting erratically at work, that she is fixated on money, that she is paranoid. Isn't it possible, Mrs. Ward, that you are being manipulated by a young woman who is having a mental health crisis?" I gripped the table. They were doing it. They were using the instability narrative in open court. "My granddaughter is the only sane person in this room," Nana said coldly. Sterling dismissed her with a wave of his hand. No further questions. My parents exchanged a look, a satisfied, smug look. They thought they had won the round. They thought they had successfully painted Nana as senile and me as hysterical. Then Elias stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "we would like to introduce Plaintiffs' Exhibit C and D." He walked to the projector. The screen lit up with a spreadsheet. "This is a credit report for Willow Ward," Elias said. "It shows a personal loan for $15,000 and a credit card balance of $6,000. Both were opened using an IP address registered to the defendant's home." He clicked a button. A new slide appeared. "And this," he said, "is a flowchart of rent payments from the West Alder duplex. For the last 6 months, the rent has been diverted from Mrs. Eleanor Ward's account to a business account for Wardstone Property Solutions. From there, the money flows to 2 places." Elias pointed to the red blocks on the screen. 70% to a debt consolidation firm. He said, and 30% to New Horizons Recovery, a gambling addiction treatment program. My father stiffened. The color drained from his face. This wasn't part of his script. He didn't know we had the forensic accounting. Mr. Ward claimed earlier that he was managing his mother's finances for her benefit. Elias said, "Unless Mrs. Eleanor Ward has developed a secret gambling habit at 84 years old, these payments suggest a different beneficiary." "Mr. Sterling jumped up. "Objection! Speculation! Overruled!" The judge barked. He was leaning forward, squinting at the screen. Elias wasn't done. "We also have a witness regarding the power of attorney document," he said. "We call Mr. Timothy Gable." The door opened, and Tim the notary walked in. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the universe. He was sweating through his shirt. He took the stand. "Mr. Gable," Elias asked, "did you notarize this signature on October 12th? "Yes," Tim whispered, "was the signer. Eleanor Ward, present at the time?" Tim looked at my mother. My mother was staring at him, her eyes wide and hard, willing him to lie. Tim looked down at his shoes. "No," he said. "Who was present?" "Mrs. Lydia Ward," Tim said, "and her husband. They met me at a Starbucks. They said the grandmother was too sick to travel. They paid me extra to stamp it without seeing her." The courtroom let out a collective breath. It was a soft, rustling sound, like leaves moving in a wind. The judge turned his head slowly to look at my parents. His expression had shifted. The polite patience was gone. In its place was a cold, hard glare. My mother's face flickered, just for a second, the mask of the pious. Concerned matriarch slipped, revealing the panic underneath. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that charm does not work on a spreadsheet. Charm does not work on a judge who sees a forged stamp. "Mr. Sterling tried to salvage it. "Mr. Gable, isn't it true you are under investigation for other irregularities? Can we really trust—" The judge cut him off. Sit down, counselor. Elias looked at me. He nodded. We call Ivy Ward to the stand. Ivy stood up from the back row. My parents turned around. My father's eyes were bulging. My mother reached out a hand, as if to grab Ivy's hem as she passed. Ivy. Don't, my father hissed. It was loud enough for the stenographer to look up. Ivy kept walking. She looked small in the witness box. She was wearing a gray sweater and no makeup. She looked like a child, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. Ivy, Elias said, you are the daughter of the defendants? Yes. Are you familiar with a family group chat known as the Core? Yes, Ivy said. Can you explain what it is? It is a group chat my mother runs, Ivy said. It includes my parents, my uncle, and my aunt. They use it to plan family narratives. Narratives? Elias asked. Stories, Ivy said. If they need money, or if someone is asking questions. They script what everyone is supposed to say. They decide who the problem is, and they coordinate how to discredit them, and who is the current problem. Willow, Ivy said. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of tears. Why? Because they needed her credit, Ivy said, and they needed to sell Nana's house. Willow was the only one who would notice, so they created a plan to make her look unstable. They called it the Willow Plan. My father slammed his hand on the table. She is lying, he shouted. He stood up, his face purple. She is upset because I cut off her allowance. She is a thief. Ask her about the shoplifting. The judge slammed his gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. Sit down, Mr. Ward, or I will have you removed. My father remained standing for a second too long, his chest heaving. He wasn't looking at the judge. He was looking at the gallery, at the neighbors and the reporters. He wasn't afraid of the legal ruling. He was terrified that the audience was seeing the cracks in his armor. He was afraid of losing the role of the respected man. He slowly sat down. Elias waited for the silence to return. Your Honor, he said, the defense claims this is a misunderstanding. They claim my client is paranoid. They claim Ivy Ward is a liar. To settle this, we would like to play a piece of evidence, a screen recording that was sent to my client's phone on October 14th. Mr. Sterling stood up. Objection. We haven't authenticated this recording. We have authenticated the metadata. Your Honor, Elias said, and the witness, Ivy Ward, can verify it, as she is the one who recorded it. Allow it. The judge said. Elias plugged his laptop into the audio system. I felt my stomach twist into a hard knot. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the screen. Her lips parted slightly, her skin the color of old ash. Elias pressed play. The sound of my parents' laughter filled the courtroom. It was amplified, distorted slightly by the speakers, making it sound grotesque. So we tell her it is a bridge loan. My mother's voice boomed. We frame it as a bridge. Willow loves that corporate speak. It makes her feel smart. The people in the gallery shifted. It was one thing to hear about fraud. It was another to hear a mother mocking her daughter's intelligence while plotting to rob her. If she panics, my father's voice rumbled. We flip it. We tell everyone she is having an episode. We call it a mental health thing. The judge went still. He stopped taking notes. He looked at the speakers, his face unreadable. Who are people going to believe? The recording continued. The successful parents, or the single daughter who lives alone and sees a therapist? Then came the planning, the calm, operational details. We use Willow's clean credit, shuffle the debt from Nana's duplex. She will never even know the money moved. Nana closed her eyes. She put her hand over her mouth. She looked like she had been physically struck. To hear her son, her baby boy, talk about shuffling her assets like pieces on a board game was too much. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a room where a monster had just been revealed. The clerk had stopped typing. The bailiff was staring at my father with open disgust. Mr. Sterling did not stand up. He stared at his notepad. He knew there was no cross-examination for that. The judge cleared his throat. Is there anything else? He asked. His voice was quiet. Dangerous. No, Your Honor, Elias said. The plaintiff rests. The judge didn't retire to his chambers. He didn't ask for a recess. He looked at my parents. Stand up, he said. My parents stood. They didn't look like hosts anymore. They looked small, shrunken. I have heard enough to issue a temporary ruling. The judge said, effective immediately. The power of attorney held by Franklin Ward regarding Eleanor Ward is suspended. I am appointing an independent financial guardian to oversee Mrs. Ward's estate pending a full investigation. He turned to the clerk. I am also referring the transcripts of this hearing, along with the exhibits regarding the notarization and the loan applications, to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges including forgery, wire fraud, and identity theft. My mother gasped. My father swayed, gripping the table, and, the judge added, his eyes locking on my father, I am issuing a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact with Willow Ward, Ivy Ward, or Eleanor Ward. You are not to come within 500 feet of their residences or workplaces. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. He leaned forward. Let me be clear. Mr. Ward, Mrs. Ward. This court does not look kindly on those who prey on their own blood. You attempted to weaponize the mental health system to cover your crimes. That is a repugnance I rarely see. Case closed. He banged the gavel. It was over. The room erupted into noise. Reporters who had been sitting in the back stood up. Sensing the blood in the water, my parents were surrounded by their lawyer, who was frantically whispering to them. I didn't look at them. I helped Nana stand up. Did we win? She asked. Her voice was frail. We won. Nana. I said, you are safe. The house is safe. She nodded. But there was no joy in her face. Just relief, mixed with a terrible grief. We walked out of the courtroom. Ivy was waiting for us by the doors. She looked terrified. But when she saw me, she exhaled. I hugged her. It was a fierce, desperate hug. You did it, I whispered. You told the truth. I'm sorry. She sobbed into my shoulder. I'm so sorry I waited so long. It's okay, I said. We're out. We walked out the front doors of the courthouse. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. A small crowd had gathered. Reporters, neighbors who had heard the rumors, people from the town. Flashbulbs popped. Ms. Ward, Ms. Ward, is it true your parents forged the documents? Willow, how do you feel? I didn't answer. I just wanted to get to the car. I wanted to go home and sleep for a week. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped. I pulled it out. A notification from Instagram. A message request. The account name was Core Observer. I frowned. I didn't know that name. I opened the message. There was no video this time, just text. One line. You played the wrong clip. I froze. The crowd noise faded into a dull roar. You played the wrong clip. What did that mean? I had played the clip that won the case. I had played the clip where they confessed to the fraud. How could it be wrong? I looked up. Across the parking lot, standing near their Mercedes, were my parents. They were arguing with Mr. Sterling. My father looked broken, his head in his hands. But my mother wasn't looking at her lawyer. She wasn't looking at my father. She was looking at me. She was standing 50 feet away, but I could see her face clearly. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was smiling. It was a small, tight smile, a knowing smile. She raised her hand and tapped her phone. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Core Observer. Check the timestamp. I looked at the video file Ivy had sent me. The one I had played in court. Date, October 14th. Time, 7:42 p.m. I looked at the file details. Duration, 02:14. Then I remembered something Ivy had said in the car. I restored the backup. Mom thought she wiped it. I looked back at my mother. Her smile widened. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The realization hit me like ice water thrown in my face. She had wanted me to find that phone. She had wanted me to find that clip. Why? Because the clip ended with my father saying, We flip it and call it a mental health thing. It incriminated my father. It painted him as the architect. It painted him as the one pushing the fraud. My mother, in that clip, was just the supportive wife, the one asking questions, the one laughing along but not leading. But there were other clips I hadn't played, clips I hadn't watched because I thought I had the smoking gun. If I had played the clip from 5 minutes later, what would I have heard? Would I have heard my mother proposing the idea? Would I have heard her threatening my father? Would I have heard her saying that he had to take the fall if they got caught? My father was going to jail. The judge had made that clear. The evidence pointed squarely at him. The notary had identified him. The loan was in his address. My mother was going to walk away. She would play the victim, the coerced wife, the woman who stood by her man until she realized what a monster he was. She had sacrificed him to save herself, and she had used me to do it. I stood there on the courthouse steps, clutching my phone. I had won the battle. I had saved Nana. I had saved my credit. But as I watched my mother get into the passenger seat of the Mercedes, smoothing her skirt as if she were going to lunch, I realized the war wasn't over. I looked at the message again. You played the wrong clip. I typed a reply. I have the rest of the backup. I watched my mother across the lot. She looked at her phone. Her smile vanished. She looked up at me, her eyes narrowing. I hit send on a second message. See you in part 2. I put the phone in my pocket. I took Nana's arm. Let's go home, I said. We walked down the steps, leaving the wreckage behind us. The story of the Ward family was over. But the story of Willow Ward, the woman who burned down the house to save the foundation, was just beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. It was a journey through the darkest parts of family betrayal, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to protect yourself? Where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, resilience, and the complicated truth of human relationships. Until next time, stay safe and trust your gut.